Hi, everyone. I'm Anna from GreenGeeks, and thank you for joining us for our first webinar of the year with Kathy Zent, CEO of Zentastic LLC, and our webinar is about AI and WordPress security in 2026, emerging threats, new vulnerabilities, and proactive defenses. So real quick, I want to say a couple of words about GreenGeeks. For those of you who may be watching us and are not familiar with us, we're a 300% green energy web hosting provider, which essentially means we put back 3 times the amount of power we consume into the grid in the form of renewable energy. We have been recognized by the US EPA since 2009 as a green power partner, and we offer share hosting, reseller hosting, VPS, and dedicated servers. Also, we have been planting a tree for every hosting account we provision, and we recently reached 50,000 trees planted through a partnership with our global reforestation nonprofit called One Tree Planted. So now, moving on to the webinar, we have a few housekeeping items to go over. If you have a question that you come up with during the presentation, if you can please go ahead and put it in the Q&A so Kathy can answer them at the end of her presentation. And then you're always welcome to chat in the chat room. Remember to select everyone if you want everyone to see what you're discussing. And we also want this to be interactive and hear your thoughts about the topic. And as always, we're recording this presentation. So we will be sending the recording to you, to all of you who are here today. We have also enabled live transcription for those of you who want to enable it during the webinar by clicking on the show captions icon. So now I'm going to introduce first from our GreenGeeks team, Erica Barbosa, who's here today to assist with the chat and the Q&A. So welcome, Erica. Do you want to say hi, introduce yourself?
Thank you, Anna. Hi, everyone. I am Erica Barbosa. I am from Costa Rica. Today, I'm going to be assisting the chat. Hope you enjoy today with Kathy. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Erica. Now I'm going to say a few words about Kathy. Kathy Zant is a published author and keynote speaker with decades of experience in information security. She has led security teams for high-profile incident response and cleaned thousands of hacked websites, performing forensic analysis to determine the root cause of intrusions. She consults with businesses in WordPress security and beyond. She's been a full-stack web developer for over 25 years and now focuses on education, empowerment, and research to help everyone be more secure. So welcome, Kathy. We missed you a lot, and we're so happy to see you. We are so happy you're doing this webinar. And welcome. You want to say hi and then maybe start sharing your presentation?
Yeah, I am so happy to be here. When you reached out to me with this idea, I was like, I haven't really thought about it. And so since then, oh my gosh, the rabbit holes I have gone down, you lit me up. Actually, I'm so excited to share all of the things that I've learned and all of the things that I kind of see on the horizon that we're going to have to think about. So I'm going to talk about like where we are right now, and then also just the risks that this new world is bringing to us. It's going to be exciting, a little bit scary, but it's going to be good.
Good.
All right, let me get my slides up here. I closed every other window.
Beautiful.
So the slides would show up the way I wanted. And so we're going to talk about AI and WordPress security. Things that, I didn't necessarily think that this was going to happen, but oh my gosh, AI is changing the landscape. It's changing our lives everywhere. So of course, it's going to affect us with security. So let's talk about it and dive right in. All right. And now my slides don't want to advance. 1 second. I think I have to change my window. Come on, slides. Let's go to the next one. Okay, there we go. All right.
Okay.
Well, Anna gave me a great introduction, but here's a bulleted list. Yeah, I'm old. I look younger than I am. I've been doing all kinds of things for a long time. The very first security incident that I was thrust into was when a web server that I inherited from the technical people wasn't secured. And so I had to learn all of it. I trusted they did it right. And I'm kind of glad they didn't, because I got to learn all sorts of things with security, and that just pulled me into a world of cleaning hack sites and really, really help. My core value is to empower you, is to give you the information to help you understand the security landscape so that you can make better decisions, because the human element with security is the most important part. It's the decisions you make, it's the policies you have, the procedures you have in place, more than the software that you use. But even the software you use is a choice. So I am here to empower you. I have previously, I love WordPress. I've been using it for a long time. I've done marketing for Cadence. I'm currently working with the Generate Press team, and I absolutely love them, love the product. And I'm still helping everybody with security, and not just WordPress security, which is fun and challenging, but all about empowering people. So if you're like, okay, this is too much, I don't know if I can handle all of this, here's your TLDR. The attacks are about the same. Protections, the attacks evolve, things change, and our protections have to change along with those attacks. Security is sort of a cat and mouse game. Hackers do something, we have to respond, we have to prepare. But the security principles underlying everything, these remain the same. Nothing has changed about security principles. You're not going to have to learn like a new way of thinking about security, really. You're just going to have to speed things up a little bit, because AI is accelerating the cycle, and that is the thing that is changing more than anything. So the key security principles in security, we talk about the CIA, and that's not the government CIA, but it's confidentiality, keeping things confidential. We want to keep confidential, maintaining the integrity, well, that's the I, making sure that data is accurate and preventing unauthorized modifications to that data, and then making sure that our systems are available. Something I talk about often is the security continuum. You don't secure everything the same way, and there's different levels of security. The most secure computer or web server is encased in cement and buried in the backyard, but that's not available, right? So there's a continuum, and every single asset you have has to be judged and secured based upon the risk assessment that you do. So my blog, I might not secure the same way that I'm securing my commerce site. My test site, I don't really even think about security, because if something happens to it, I just wipe it out, and it's just for testing. I don't really care about it. So each asset has to be evaluated in a different way. So that is something to consider as we dive into this new landscape. Now, why is this affecting WordPress? Well, that principle still remains the same as well. Because it's powering over 40% of the internet, it's a huge target. Hackers love economy of scale. So if they have to learn the code base and the attack structure of going after any software, they're going to go after the bigger targets, because it's just faster, it's easier. It's like, if I can develop an exploit that's going to hit 100,000 sites or 5 million sites, it's a lot more expedient for them to do the thing that they're motivated by, and that is to make money. So it's going to remain a primary target for hackers into the future, no matter what's going on. So let's talk about what hackers are actually doing right now that we've seen them do over the last couple of years with AI tools becoming prevalent. But in order to do that, we have to understand sort of the cycle of vulnerabilities and the cycle of attacks. So I want to talk a little bit about that. So when a vulnerability is discovered, it can be discovered by two types of people. They're all hackers. There's the good hat hacker, the white hat hackers, the good hackers, the security researchers who are looking for vulnerabilities so that they can report them to developers and hopefully get a bug bounty where they get paid for responsibly disclosing that there's a vulnerability. And then you have the other side of the coin, the black hat hackers, those who are motivated by making even more money potentially, by discovering a vulnerability and designing an attack to exploit that vulnerability. Now, the white hat hackers will responsibly disclose it, and then the developer will send back a patch and say, hey, does this close it for you? The researcher will check it out, say, yeah, that works, and then you get an update in your WP admin plugin update, and that patch is then released out to everyone using that software. Well, then what happens is that security researchers will look to get a CVE, a number, a unique identifier assigned to that vulnerability, because they need to do this in order to keep their credentials up to date. So that's one of their motivations as well as the bug bounties to do security research. And then that's disclosed. So these CVEs, or common vulnerability and exposure, that's what CVE stands for, and it's got a unique identifier. These things are then assigned like a value, a CVSS score, and I can't remember that acronym off the top of my head, but it goes from a severity of a 10, which is a critical vulnerability that's super easy to exploit, down to 0, which means not exploitable or something like that. And then there's all these numbers in between. So these disclosures, what will end up happening is you'll get the patch released, and then the CVE will be told to everyone that there was a vulnerability, it's been patched, please go update, and they won't provide any details until a later date. Keep all of this in mind, this cycle of vulnerability discovery, patching, and then everybody patching their sites, because this is going to be important when we understand what's happening with AI. Now, what's AI doing for your workflows? It's probably making everything faster, right? Well, it's doing the same thing, not just for security researchers, but for the malicious actors who look at your site like it's a juicy target. So we want to keep all of this in mind as we look at what AI is doing to this entire process. So it is making everything faster, as you can imagine. It is making not only writing a proof of concept, which is what the security researcher will put together, saying, okay, here's when they contact a developer saying, hey, I found a vulnerability, here's the POC, or proof of concept, of how this vulnerability could be exploited, just to show the developer what is involved in the vulnerability. So they can write this proof of concept faster. They can do automated scans looking for vulnerable plugins and themes in any code, really. They can look for vulnerabilities in any public code bases. And it's making that 0-day vulnerability, the ones that hackers know about and maybe are going to exploit, or maybe they're going to sell it on the black market to somebody else who wants to exploit it. These 0-day vulnerabilities, that means that the time between the discovery and the exploitation being 0, these 0-day vulnerabilities are much more easy to discover. It's just making everything faster. So it's putting together reconnaissance. So when they decide that, hey, I think there's a vulnerability here, I want to go see what I can do with it, chaining vulnerabilities together, and I'm going to explain that in a second, and even what they're doing after they do that exploit. And I think one of the sites that I worked on, incident response I worked on, is a perfect illustration of how AI is going to change things. Now, this happened 6 or 7 years ago, so I can talk about it. It was a very high profile attack. And what happened, the intrusion point, was a guy was reusing passwords. And he was reusing passwords along with his email address that was like joe@companyname.com. And one other site had a breach. Somebody got in, exfiltrated all of the usernames and passwords, and they saw joe@companyname.com. That's an interesting password. I wonder if he's using it for his WordPress site at companyname.com. Went to the WP admin or the login, put in the email address and the reused password, and got in. Days later, that hacker was still on that site, just poking around, looking for things, found a plugin that was super useful that wasn't activated called PHP exec, activated that plugin, and then poked around a little more. And then he found out that they were self-hosting this website themselves, and it was not, the server was not patched. And he was able to discover that. And over a course of many days, he found that he was able to get into their internal networks, into their financial systems, and that company no longer exists today. If that had happened today, the time between that initial reused password being used to get into that server and the time when he got the financial data, that would have all been smushed. He would have done it within hours. The Target hack that happened in 2013 when an HVAC vendor's computer that had a malicious software on it was on the Target network. Those hackers took, I think it was a week before they actually figured out that they were able to get into all of the cash registers with Target. It would have happened so much faster. So these are the types of things that can happen with AI now. These things where a hacker just maintains state in the background, poking around, looking for opportunities, testing things, staying under the radar. They don't spend that much time poking around anymore. They used automated tools in order to look for vulnerabilities, chain those things together, and get the mother lode. So that is what is happening. It's collapsing pipelines of patches. It's giving capabilities to even low-skill attackers to weaponize flaws. And it's also allowing them to do things so fast that we have to get a little faster. And I'm going to talk about that at the end, what we need to do in order to deal with all of this. Another thing that's happening right now is something called polymorphic malware. Big word. Pretty easy to understand, though. Basically, malware, like you have scanners that look for malware, and they use something called signatures. So they've seen a piece of malware, they write a signature that identifies that malware. That's how you get an alert that your site has been hacked. Malware scanner sees something based on a signature. And what they're doing now is creating malware that evades signatures because the malware mutates. It basically changes its clothes. It's like going and changing from Batman into Aquaman. And so like the signatures like don't see anything here, but it's doing the same thing. It just looks different. So this polymorphic malware is something that's been happening and is becoming much more sophisticated. So it's going to be harder and harder to detect malware. And AI is, of course, accelerating the writing of this type of malware. And then, of course, you've seen all of the deep fakes, I'm sure. I just saw a video last week where it was, they took the characters from Stranger Things and they have the guy down in the corner and he's doing all the faces, but it's like the characters from Stranger Things are making these faces and it's just emulating. It's getting crazy out there. They can emulate your voice. There's even tools that, I've used for like audio and video that can, replicate my voice. So this type of deep fake social engineering is going to start exploiting the weakest link, which is human trust. And it's going to impersonate people. I see this as something that is going to be a risk, not just in the WordPress space, but elsewhere. Support technicians, fake support technicians who are telling people to deactivate this plugin or remove the security feature, and that's going to, we need to have you do this. Somebody contacting you saying that they're from your hosting provider and it's someone you've talked to and it looks just like them, and faking people out and making them basically lower their security or give up essential information, confidential information based on these deep fakes. So I see a risk for hosting providers, for plugin developers, for agency support, all of these types of things, whether you're doing sites for other people or it's your site, just confirm everything, trust but verify, they always say. So I see something like this being able to affect WordPress. The other thing would be AI enhanced brute force attacks and botnets. And I'm kind of seeing some of these context aware types of things, like on Facebook groups. Somebody asks a question, hey, how do I do this? And you see a response that somebody puts in there trying to sell them like a Fiverr gig or something. And you can just tell it's 100% AI. The response, the comment is 100% AI. I see this happening with WordPress comments. I'm turning off WordPress comments on most of the sites that I'm managing, but I'm seeing this happening already. How it's being used for password prediction. If you're using some pattern for your passwords, something like, my husband was terrible at this. I'm like, you live with me. Why are you doing this? But he would take a word and then put like certain characters at the end of that. I've since fixed all of that on his accounts, but if you're using any kind of password pattern and your one password ends up in a breach, all they have to do is take that password, run it through AI, maybe even doing it at scale, take all of these passwords from this breach and give me 100 or 100,000 other passwords that are somewhat like this that could be used, and then a brute force attack based on that. Super easy to do, which is why you need to use password managers. You need to use long passwords and unique passwords everywhere. Passwords should not be something up here. They need to be in a password manager. And we have to talk about the supply chain. What is the supply chain? The supply chain is the software that you are using. You go to your WP admin, you have to duplicate a page. And so you go and you search for a plugin that allows you to duplicate a page very quickly, install that, and you have just installed something from the supply chain, a supply of software. Well, there have been some interesting intrusions. Even over the past year, there have been a couple of premium plugin providers that have been hacked and have had malicious code placed in their software. And then that software ends up on people's WordPress sites. It's not anything new. There's nothing wrong with those developers, but they were attacked. There was a package last year called NPM. It's a Node package module, and it's Node.js. And it's not in your WordPress site, but it is used by many software developers, especially software developers who are developing like blocks. So Node.js is something that is used, and Node, the NPM package, one of the maintainers of that package got hacked, and malicious code was placed in NPM. And that, it seems like so far away on the supply chain from WordPress, but it's not completely divorced from WordPress. So anybody who develops software for WordPress has to take extreme precautions, because all of these things can affect the supply chain. And think about, well, I just saw a statistic in the repository, which is a WordPress business newsletter, and they just, on their January 16th issue, they noted that the number of plugins that have been submitted to the WordPress repo have over doubled. And I can tell you why. People are vibe coding plugins. They're going into Claude Code or whatever they're using and saying, I need a plugin for WordPress that does this. And then they're submitting it to the repo. So, hugs for the repo team that they have to evaluate more and more plugins. But the thing is like a lot of developers are like, I need a plugin that does this. I can't find it in the repo. I'm just going to vibe code it, and I'm going to package it up, and I'm going to put it on WordPress. And is that code being reviewed for any security issues? It's been written by AI. So these types of precautions and these types of risks have to be taken a look at. So AI vibe coded plugins are out there. So you have to be very judicious about what you're installing on your site, no matter what. And if you're vibe coding for your own site, something to consider. And I've got some advice at the end about that. Okay, so my friends at Sucuri and WordFence have some really cool tools. Sucuri Site Check and WordFence CLI are these open tools that can allow you to run all sorts of security commands. You can put a site into Security Site Check and say, tell me if there's any indications of compromise on this site. WordPress CLI, you can just use that on the command line to analyze something. And these open tools are allowing you to do all kinds of cool things to look at malware. But I hear that many attackers are using these tools as well to say, hey, can you see my malware? Open tools are wonderful, but attackers are going to use them as well. No shade on these companies. I think that they're doing great work by making these tools available, but it's just something to be aware of that especially with the capabilities with AI, that these open tools are making it easier for obfuscation of code to occur. They're more able to hide from the scanners if they first test on the scanners before they deploy their malware. The other thing that's happening is that AI is making it a lot easier to do distributed attacks. Now, you may have heard of a distributed denial of service attack. This has been around for a while. First started out as a DOS, a denial of service attack. And that's just when you send like tons of pings to a website until it's overwhelmed with the pings that it can't serve up traffic to people who want to visit that website. So a DOS is a denial of service attack. A distributed or a DDoS just is an attack that's coming from millions of IP addresses, and it's much more challenging to mitigate that kind of attack. You have to do it at the network level, and hosting providers have capabilities where they're like, okay, a client's getting DDoSed. We need to protect all of our clients because it could take down the entire network. So they just kind of funnel that attack by doing so at the network level. It's nothing you're going to ever have to worry about. If you think you're having one, GreenGeeks is going to take care of you. But here's the thing. Attackers are now taking other types of attacks and doing them in a distributed way as well. So in the past, you could say, oh, well, there's malicious traffic coming from this IP address, block that IP. But now with better tools and better command and control systems and AI empowering and speeding the process, they're doing distributed attacks. It's not just a distributed denial of service attack. They're looking for default configurations like, okay, we know GreenGeeks is set up this way, GoDaddy set up this way, Liquid Web set up that way, and we can take our attack and we can customize it basically for each of those types of things and attack from a multiple IP address. So these attacks are becoming much more sophisticated, and our old tools aren't working for these types of things. You just can't block, I remember when I worked at WordPress, people would just use the IP blocker and, well, I just blocked all the malicious attacks, so everything's fine. And those kinds of things don't work anymore. And the intelligence behind it needs to get elevated as well. One of my friends, Thomas Rafe, who works at, owns We Watch Your website. He watches like over 10 million websites, not only the traffic that's coming in them, but he also watches log files. And he found some really interesting malware. This malware was double encoded. So it is obfuscated. So let's say, for an example, he's got, if you go to wewatchyourwebsite.com, there's a blog post, his most recent one, walks through the technical analysis on this, so you can look at that later. But basically, let's say you have a redirect that goes to a bad part of the internet that's going to install malware on somebody's computer. So this redirect is just basically one little line of code. They're hiding it in a URL encode and then a base 64 encode. And unfortunately, malware scanners can't see it because it is so obfuscated. And they're hiding it in legitimate embeds and also in theme options and in things like page builders. So page builders, allows you to do all kinds of really cool, fun things. And then it's got like an encoding system. And then when somebody's requesting your site, it decodes it, right? And you see all the short codes and everything once stuff breaks. So it's all like locked up in here. And then they have this double obfuscated code stuck into like WP Bakery's encoding system. And the malware scanners are not seeing it. I don't think that this code was going to get done unless you had AI. AI is doing this. It's helping attackers create advanced code that evades malware scanners. So he's got the fingerprints on that blog post. It's basically hiding stuff in divs. You'll see some external scripts where you can't even tell that's, you'll just see a HTTP and a URL, and it's pulling in an external script. So you can't really even tell from the malware that's on the site what is really going on with it. And then there's some CSS classes, but go look at that because that's really interesting. And I think that this is something that is happening because of AI. AI automates sophisticated hiding and coding at scale and being able to do this kind of advanced malware. And these tools aren't finding it. Thomas found it because he actually manually cleaned, like the old days when we had to clean a site by actually looking at the code. So Thomas still does that. He's amazing. If you're not following Thomas, he finds all kinds. He's like one of my great sources for, oh, look what they're doing now. So he sees it all. So something I got from Google did a webinar about what they're seeing with AI and what attackers are doing. The one point I wanted to bring forward here is that they are not seeing anything new in terms of attacks. They are basically just seeing enhanced productivity for hackers. Their defenses are not getting broken. There's no attacks that we haven't seen before. There's been no new 0 days that have been discovered from using Gemini, but they did mention they're doing a project called Big Sleep where they're actually using AI to look for vulnerabilities in all sorts of code bases. So Google is actually leveraging AI, and their defenders are actually watching what attackers are doing with AI. So I'm keeping an eye on that, and as I see things, you can go onto my YouTube channel if I find something super cool. But they're not seeing anything like new. It's just that time frame of like how security works is now just collapsed. It's happening so much faster. Of course, the cost. Why is cybersecurity important? According to MasterCard's study in 2025, about 20% of small businesses go out of business when they have a cyber attack. So they will go out of business. But the risks, there can be financial devastation. Of course, you're going to have your site cleaned, ransomware payments, legal costs. But the big thing to me is always customer trust and downtime. One of my clients, they had downtime for an hour, and they're like, that's $50,000 for us. I'm like, wow, you guys are making some boku bucks, but $50,000 for an hour of downtime is kind of crazy. So if your site is hacked and it goes down, or you have to take it down because it's redirecting all of the visitors to malware that infects people's computers, that type of operational risk is huge. And then there's the whole reporting aspect of things. If you have an e-commerce site that has customer data and somebody gets into your site, you are required by law in certain jurisdictions to let your customers know that their information has been exposed. And personally identifiable information, they call it PII in the security space, can be an IP address. So if you are storing IP addresses, email addresses, names, addresses, phone numbers, all of that stuff is personally identifiable information, and you need to let your customers know. Of course, there are the right ways to let customers know, and there's the wrong way. This could be an opportunity to really establish trust with the customer in the way that you communicate to them. So telling them what happened, being upfront about it, what you're doing to protect yourself, what they need to do to protect themselves, offering them, the protections that like the credit bureaus have where they fraud detection, if any of their financial information has been exposed, offering a way to support them. You can do things the right way, you can do things the wrong way. So it doesn't have to completely destroy your business. How you handle and prepare for a security event can make the difference. That's why I always talk about having an incident response plan in place. What are we going to do when this happens, not if this happens? And that's something I can help you do. If you're interested, I do that kind of thing for people. But let's talk about how you defend yourself against these pesky hackers and their new tools. I think we need to accelerate our defenses. If you consider a weekly plugin update as your regular way of doing business, which, that's kind of been my thing. It's like Tuesday's plugin update day. I'll keep an eye on things and see if there's anything like super egregious. But I think we need to do more frequent plugin and theme updates and just accelerate that, because if there is any kind of vulnerability, you want to be the first to patch it, not the last. So really looking at when you have a patch, going and seeing what's new, and you see the actual devlog of the change log of what's new in that version of that software. And if they say security on there, you update immediately. Accelerating your strong passwords, strong, unique passwords. Everyone in your organization, in your client's organization, everyone you know, your mom, your grandma, we should all be using a strong password manager. I highly recommend 1Password or Bitwarden, and securing that password manager as well, and just using those really strong, long passwords. Two-factor authentication on everything WP admin, your hosting account if they have that available, your email, because your email can be used for all sorts of things as a second factor. So you want to make sure your email is strongly secured. Make sure everyone who's working on your sites is educated about good security practices, because all it takes, if you have a VA who's updating something on your site and they have admin access, that's a security risk. You've increased the surface attack profile for that particular person. If all they need to update is like one little thing, they get editor access. So these types of things, your policies, your procedures, the education that you provide to everyone who is working in your business, this is all going to be just more important, just because attackers, their method of attacking is becoming much more sophisticated, and it is empowered by AI. I also recommend regular, frequent manual auditing, especially if you have, if you have a high profile site that is paying for your family's food, if that's your business, you're not going to treat that the same way you treat a blog, right? It's got a much higher value as an asset. And I would recommend just doing frequent auditing, especially if you have multiple people working on that site, because people do stuff all the time. Like, oh, well, I need to do this one thing. I need this plugin to do it. And then they just leave the plugin there. Every additional plugin you have on your site is increasing that surface attack layer. So you want to make sure that you are looking at your site frequently. And at the end of this presentation, I'm going to give you an opportunity to get a checklist with just some basic information of what to look for, so that you can start doing your own security auditing. And then look for LLM empowered security tools. More and more of the security providers are putting that in. One thing that we're going to see security providers do is they're going to transition away from signature defenses and then looking at more behavior defenses, because the polymorphic malware that we're seeing across the InfoSec space is evading the signatures. And so now we have to look at, what is this malware doing, not what does it look like. So it would kind of be like if you see an attacker, let's talk about crime, like you see an attacker and that guy looks like a bad guy, and you make a snap judgment on like somebody prowling in your yard. You don't make the judgment based on the fact that they're wearing a ski mask. You make the judgment based on, what are they doing out there? What's the malware doing? So we're looking at behavior. So WP security vendors are going to need to pivot away from signature-based anomaly detection, because it's where the InfoSec world is going. It's what hackers are doing, and we need to respond to that. If you have tools that can do predictive AI, do automated vulnerability scanning, and I can talk a little bit, I got some information about what GreenGeeks is doing. We'll talk about that at the end here. Leverage AI for real-time threat intelligence. Like, whatever you're doing to get your news, go to these reputable sources about InfoSec and make sure that that information is in your in your view, that you're just paying attention, because you have to know ahead of time. You can't find out 3 weeks from now, oh, there was a vulnerability in a plugin that's very important to our site or to our stack. Also, being able to flag deepfake attacks, phishing attacks. If you are working in an organization, you should be doing phishing tests on everyone in your company, which is super fun to do for your boss. You know, we're just testing you, just want you to be phishing aware. So, but you should be phishing and looking for these polymorphic variants, the way that things change. If you are writing your own plugins, and you're using GitHub Copilot has security extensions. Make sure you're using those so that you are looking for any vulnerabilities that you might be introducing into your workflows. And then look for firewalls that have machine learning, that are using AI tools. Cloudflare's AI bot management was recommended, that can learn from patterns to preemptively block these orchestrated exploits. And then, because of the distributed attacks, we have to layer our defenses. You want to enforce strict update policies across all layers of your business, not just your WordPress site, because your email can be used to get into your WordPress site. Everything. Diversify your hosting and CDN. Backups if you're not doing backups. And then backup policy is different for each individual site. You know, commerce site, you're going to have to back up that like frequently, whereas your blog, maybe not as frequently if you're not a frequent updater. File integrity checks, making sure that your file, that when files change, you should know about it. If you didn't make a change and a file changed, you should at least investigate. And then leverage distributed attack intelligence. And I really go check out Thomas Rafe, and we watch your website, because he's watching 10 million websites. I think it might be more than that. I'm not even sure. The last time I talked to him, it was around 10 million. And so he's not just seeing the attacks coming in, he's seeing what happens once they're on the site, and seeing what is happening across many different hosting providers, across many different networks. He's seeing what attackers are doing from a distributed standpoint, not just a single site. You can't protect your site just thinking about your site. You have to think about what are attackers doing as a whole, and then educate and simulate attacks. They do something called tabletop exercises, where it's like, okay, our website is now under attack. What are we going to do? So that is very instrumental in developing an incident response plan so that your organization is prepared in the event of an attack. And then this slide I just added this morning because I'm like, we should talk about, like, we're all using AI, right? You're using it, I'm using it. How are you securing your AI usage? Because how many chats do you have in there? They're all still in there. Are you talking about customer situation in there? What's your data retention policy for the chats you're having, or the chats that any of your employees are having? How long are they keeping them? Are you keeping data in these AI tools for a longer period of time than what you need? Then I started thinking about, like, how we're bringing AI into WordPress. And as we do that, how do we detect when there's a prompt injection on our website with AIs in our website? If somebody's doing a prompt to, like, use the AI tool that's in our website in order to do further damage to our website, how are we detecting that? How are we monitoring that? It's just adding another layer of something that we need to watch for. And then if you have an AI tool that's in WordPress, and I know a lot of these tools, like there was just a recent vulnerability, I just lost the company, but they had a REST endpoint going out to AI tools, and that REST endpoint was not secured. So we're bringing AI into WordPress. And honestly, I would think about your AI tool, however you're using it, however you're connecting it to WordPress, think about it as another, like, user. It's another user, it's another entry point. And we need to consider the principle of least privilege for AI, and only give access to whatever it is within our AI, within our WordPress site, that the AI needs to do. AI is writing content, well, it really doesn't need to look at the users so much, does it? It doesn't need to look at what plugins are installed. It doesn't need to look at the options table, does it? If it's just writing content. So considering how our AI is coming into WordPress, I think it's something we all need to think about as these tools are coming into the WordPress space more and more. And then I actually had the thought, nobody said this to me, but I'm like, what happens if somebody's like we have AI connected in WordPress? Can an attacker use that AI to attack further, to deepen their investigation, to formulate an attack? Because there's a LLM right there. As you bring AI into WordPress, as AI is brought into WordPress for you, these are questions we need to ask as security aware professionals to say, what can this possibly do? And how is this increasing that attack surface? So I just gave you a bunch of, these are the things I'll be keeping me up at night. I did ask Anna, hey, what is GreenGeeks doing for protection? I should really talk about that. So here are some quick bullet points. They've got firewalls, multiple firewalls. They're doing live kernel patches, weekly package updates, live monitoring to make sure all packages, because there's all these packages on a server that need to stay updated, security patching plugins for clients. If they see that there's a problem with a plugin, they're going to take a look at it and say, okay, how does this affect our clients and what can we do to accelerate the defense here? They've got 2 different scanning tools, 2 server protective tools, and weekly checks for security issues for user accounts, which I thought was pretty cool. So GreenGeeks, trophy for the security work you're doing. Here are some resources. Thomas, we watch your website. Of course, PatchStack is doing great work, WordFence, Sakuri. And I got a little something that I developed with Nathan Ingram called Monster Secure. And this is training for non-technical teams. If you have people who are using WordPress, clients, or people who are new to WordPress and you're not quite so sure how they are with security. This is really basic 101 security things that people need to know. And it's kind of, Nathan has it structured like how you buy it. You like buy it once and then you have like seats for everybody type of thing. But you can go look at Monster Secure and see if your clients might be interested in that. And then I have something else for you, security audit checklist. I did audits and incident response for WordFence when I worked for them, and I developed their security audit protocols. And so this is sort of a tweak on that and a few things that I've added. They may have changed it completely since I worked there, but this is mine. This is what I use. And you can get it. I even put a QR code, so you don't even have to try to like type this all in, but you can go there, you can subscribe to my newsletter, you can get that. It'll automatically send it out to you. And if you're like, Kathy, I don't want to do this, I do security audits for you. I also do security consulting. And if you want me to clean a site, I can clean a site, or I can probably refer you to Thomas. But if you have any security incidents and you need my help, I'm happy to consult with you and to help you. And I just want to thank you and open it up for questions.
Wow, awesome. That was great. There was a lot of chat in the webinar chat and comments.
Okay, good, because I did not pay attention to any of it because I was like
I
presenting.
do,
So, but I'm
because
ready for questions.
yes, here are some questions. Gizu is asking, could you please recommend your 3 steps to protect passwords?
Yes, passwords. Use a password manager. 1Password, their protocols for how they secure things is best in class. 1Password is recommendation. Bitwarden, though, they do a really nice job, and it's only $10 a year for the pro version. And then 2-factor authentication, no matter what, because you never know what's going to be coming at you. And that second factor of authentication, if all that a service is offering is a SMS code, use it, although using the Authenticator app is the better way of doing it. But if all you have, banks, I'm like, banks, get with the program. They're all still just using text. But anyway, yeah, you use really strong passwords. I'm using like 16 to 20 character, very complex. I don't know a single password anymore. They're all very complex. They're all in a password manager, and I just think everyone needs to do that, not just WordPress people.
I know. I keep meaning to do it every time we do a webinar, and I have to get myself to do it. Gabrielle is asking, what are LLM empowered security tools?
Yeah, so I did a bunch of research and reached out to all of the WordPress people, and I know that Thomas is using LLM. LLM is just a large language model. It's AI. It's basically AI tools that are looking at malware, not just from a signature standpoint, but from a behavioral standpoint. And they're all moving towards that. So just that's a question you ask them when you're choosing a security vendor, whether it's, working with Thomas or if we're working with someone else. That's a question that you ask them. How are they leveraging that? And how are they looking for behavioral models, patterns, rather than just signature-based malware detection or attack protection too?
Okay. John is asking, what about behavioral capability governance? Is this a strategy?
Behavioral capability governance. So that would be the rules that you would establish within your organization, the policies and procedures of behavioral governance. So are you talking about like for malware detection, or are you talking about like the behavior of the people within your organization?
I guess John will have to give us some more
Yeah.
details so you can answer that question.
Yeah.
Let's see, let's move on with Tony. Is there a free password manager you recommend? As we talked about, those ones are paid, right? 1Password.
Yeah. I would go with Bitwarden. But the only thing that I would do is after you sign up with Bitwarden, you download it, you have to go into the website and log in there, but increase the encryption on it. And there's a bunch of websites out there that'll talk about like the different encryption capabilities within Bitwarden. They've got a tutorial page on how to do it, and I would just heighten the encryption on it. But Bitwarden is great. It's only $10 a year if you want the pro version. You'll just have to evaluate whether or not but it's free. It's open source. Just heighten the encryption on it and make sure you set everything up with a very strong master password that, is not on your computer somewhere that and set up the two-factor on that as well.
Okay, let's see. Beverly is asking odd question, but is there evidence that other platforms like Squarespace, Wix, Shopify, etc., are just as vulnerable as WordPress?
Yes,
Yes.
they are.
Yes, the question is.
Yeah, the difference is because WordPress is open source and community maintained, you have so many more eyes on the code base and so many more responses available. If a AI-based attack is going at Squarespace, you don't know about it. You just have to trust that their security team has it under control. Whereas WordPress, because it's open source, it just requires greater responsibility on all of our parts to stay informed and to stay aware. And when you have a plugin update, you evaluate it, say, oh, security update, make sure that's done right now, and not leave it to just a big company to handle. So actually, I think WordPress is more secure because it is open and because you have more eyes and more AI tools looking
Yes.
at the code.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Jamie is saying, thanks for the webinar. My question is, if Kathy knows Wazoo, what is her opinion about that software, WAZUH?
Oh, yeah. What is that?
Wazoo?
That's network level stuff. We used that before at a different company. I can't really give you any background on it. I haven't used it for a while, so but
Yeah,
it's
it's an open source.
network sniffing.
Okay,
Yeah, I don't have
fair
anything
enough.
on it.
And then we have a question from Gabrielle. Again, your most recommended anti-spam tools for WooCommerce.
Anti-spam tools. Oh, you're talking about carding attacks, right? Yeah, carding attacks, honestly, for great.
Yeah,
Make sure you
carding attack.
have an exceptional firewall that blocks the carding attacks before it even gets. That's the easiest thing to do. I've heard people talk about Clean Talk as being really good for like blocking that kind of stuff, but I've never used it. I've just heard chatter about it. So I would just make sure your firewall is really good. I actually that's how I'm protecting the couple of commerce sites that I help people with, that we just have an amazing firewall, sometimes a little too amazing, that's in front of it, and we don't get the carding attacks.
Then there's a question about, maybe you know better than we do, from Tony. GreenGeeks monitors AI attacks on the WordPress sites they host. I guess we do monitor. Of course, we always monitor attacks.
Yeah.
The
Yeah, I think
security.
from the email you sent me about what
Yeah,
GreenGeeks
yeah,
is doing, yeah, they've got multiple firewalls in
for
place.
monitoring,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
And then Kim is saying, given the new threats with AI, would you recommend upgrading to WordFence Pro, or is the free version sufficient?
The difference between WordFence Free and Pro is that you get malware signatures and firewall rules immediately upon their knowledge of knowing that something is going on. If you're using the free version, its free version is actually quite good. Their cross-site scripting rules are exceptional in the free version, but the very unique rules. So if there's an attack out there that's extremely unique, doesn't fit with any traditional firewall blocking, their rules are going to block that immediately. So, that it would be up to you. And of course, it depends on what you're protecting. And, there's a number of different ways to do it. So, but that's the big difference, is that you just get the rules and the malware signatures immediately instead of 30 days late. But if you're updating, you don't need the firewall necessarily. The firewall is just like if you're busy and you're not paying attention and an attack comes through, that type of thing.
Okay. Let's see what else we have here. Question from Miriam. Curious if you have any recommendation for how best to update cybersecurity risk management policies in the context of AI for small organizations with limited internal IT capacity.
I'm going to read that.
Oh, yeah, sure.
How best to update risk management policies in the context of AI for small organizations with limited IT capacity. Yeah, okay. Geez, small organizations, you're using AI, right? My thing with small organizations that I'm trying to encourage more of is better policies and procedures. So making sure that customer data isn't going into AI, that business process documents aren't going into AI, like competitive things that a competitor could use against you type of thing. Like, what things would you not tell your neighbor about? What things are sensitive? So you need to like look at what has the highest risk profile, what could really damage your business, and then those things don't go into AI. Or if it needs to go into AI, that the chats are immediately deleted. I honestly think that for any business using AI, you have to have a data retention policy for all of your chats, no matter what, because you just don't know, and just don't leave stuff in there. Unless you're using it, and so like if you're setting up a project and I need all of this stuff, you put it into the project, you do the project, then you delete the project and you delete all of that backup documentation, and don't just leave it there, because somebody could get into someone's email, and if you have a shared team, Joe down the hall could be having email issues, and his SSO for Google, his single sign-on for Google, gets compromised, and then they get into all of these types of things. The best thing is to lower the attack surface and don't leave anything in your AI.
Yeah, that's great. I don't see any other open question here in the Q&A. I was going to ask you if you could share one more time that slide with your information and your QR code. Someone was asking.
Yeah, for sure. Let me put that up.
Just quickly for people to see.
Yep, I
Wonderful.
just have to, there it is right there. Or you can just go to zant.com/greengeeks26.
And this is the best way if people want to get in touch with you. This is the best way, Kathy?
Yeah, if you put your email in there and if you subscribe to the newsletter, there's also a little comment box on that page. So I would love your feedback on this presentation. Was I clear? Did I make things more complicated? Did I make you feel better? Did I empower you? So give me some feedback, give me some love on how was this presentation for you? Did you get what you thought you came for? So you can just write me anything there and I'll respond to you. I'd be happy to hear from
Okay.
you.
That's great. That's great. Okay, great. We're on top of the hour, so I guess I'm gonna let everybody go. And thank you so much, everybody, for staying to the end. Keep watching out for webinars at greengeeks.com/webinars. Thank you, Erica, for your help with this webinar. And Kathy, you know how we feel about you, how much we're
Oh,
thankful
I
to
love
have you.
I miss you.
know,
Can't wait
we
to see
love
you
you
soon.
too. I'm sure
Thank you.
we'll see each
Thank
other
you, Anna.
soon. Thank you.
Thank you,
We
Kathy,
see you
for the
soon.
webinar.
Bye, everyone.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone. Thank
Bye.
you.